All right. So, me and you, Jen, here we go. Are you ready? Oh, and I know that the time is a little bit off, so it could very much be that people are still fighting traffic. Who knows? But here we go. So, I have to say this. I'm super excited. I am super excited that you're here because I feel that if you are here, oh, hold on. Let me let Blair in and then we'll dive in again. Hi, Blair. So
Hola.
we're hello. So we're gonna go ahead and dive right in. I was telling Jen that I'm super excited that she's here because I do feel that the reason that you guys are here is because there's probably something in this that your body needs. You may not logically know it, but your body needs. So before we get started, I just want to just create an environment of just safety before we begin, just so that we can be in our bodies and then we'll keep moving forward from there. So, what I want to do is go ahead and just, you can either close your eyes, or if you don't want to close your eyes, you can just kind of soften your gaze. But I really just want you to bring your attention to your body, not your thoughts, not your schedule, not what are you going to do later after this class is over, just the actual sensations in your body. And I just want to give you just a few minutes just to connect with it. And then right here, just on your heart space, if it feels right to you, you can go ahead and just kind of rub your heart space. We're just letting your nervous system know that you're safe and that it doesn't have to sit here and constantly scan for anything so your brain can relax. And then go ahead and just take a slow breath in through your nose for 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, holding for just a second. And then go ahead and exhale out your mouth for 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. And then I want you to just check in with your body one more time. And then go ahead and let's do this again. So go ahead and inhale for 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Just holding just for a little bit. And then again out for 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. And then I just want you to feel the weight of your body that's completely supported beneath you. Just notice how that feels. No judgment, nothing else. Just want you to take notice of it. And now just connect with your breathing and the way that your breath moves your ribs, how it contracts and expands, how your breath moves in your chest and then in your belly. And then now go ahead and just shift your awareness just slightly outward. Not full blown into the room, but just into your own field. And I just want you to feel it. And it doesn't have to be anything mystical. I just want you to feel your own tone and your own rhythm. We all have that within our field. And as you connect with that, I just want you to ask yourself, where am I? And I don't want you to ask this question not in time, but really in your own tone and frequency. Where am I? And then just notice, do you feel tightness? Are you open and ready to receive? Do you feel foggy? Maybe your own energy is a little fast, or maybe it's subdued. Maybe you might be a little bit over alert or hyper vigilant. That's okay. Or maybe you just got home from work and you're like, I am now in my calm mode. But I just want you to notice. That's all we're doing is just noticing. And then just take one final slow breath in, as deep, deep, deep as you can go. And then just an even longer exhale. And it's in that exhale that we're really exercising the diaphragm, which is really important for the vagus nerve because the vagus nerve connects to the diaphragm. It actually branches off. So it connects to the diaphragm in two particular places. And when we exhale and we really exhale and let that exhale just flow as long as we can, we are actually exercising it. And that helps with what we're going to be talking about today. All right. And now that you all have landed in your body, let's get started. Okay. Like I said, now that we're all here and we landed in our body, I just want to start with something that I feel is very real. We all experience it. There is not one person on this planet that doesn't experience this. And it's that experience of being stuck in the loop. And sometimes that loop, no matter what we do, we just end up like repeating the same reactions, having the same emotional tone, the same pressure that builds up in our system. But here's the important thing that I want you to understand. You are not broken because this is happening. You're not doing anything wrong, and you're definitely not failing at anything. What is actually happening is that you are caught in what's known as a phase lock. And we use the a lot of terms that we use is we have a block, we have a barrier, but the actual term when we're talking about coherence is the word phase lock. And so a phase lock is what happens when our system gets locked in to it could be a very old frequency pattern. And what this pattern actually is a protective pattern. And in psychology, we usually either call this a trauma response or a survival response. And what happens is that it keeps replaying itself quietly in the background. And it actually becomes very unconscious. So this pattern, this subconscious pattern just keeps pressing play. And what happens is our nervous system is then responding to these survival responses. And when just keeps playing play, that locks in tighter and tighter and tighter to the point where our subconscious will go to that pattern, almost to the point where it then becomes an automatic response. And so that's why things oftentimes don't shift because we have to understand exactly what the root of that phase lock is so that we can then create safety to allow whatever it is that we're going to install in there and replace of whatever this pattern is. So, you know, I just want to encourage you because it's not like when you're caught in this, like it's not like you're not trying, but because we can't necessarily think our way out of a pattern that isn't coming directly from our logical mind, this can be very difficult. Because, again, and I've said this before, that we operate 90% of the time, honestly, from that subconscious mode. There are things that we don't even realize like that we're doing. For example, breathing. It is actually it is an automatic response that the subconscious says, "Hey, I better keep this pattern going, otherwise I might die." So, this is one of the reasons why I wanted to bring this to you because I feel this is really important when we're talking about trying to get out of those survival responses. I feel like this is part of the main piece when we're talking about healing those those things that just keep returning. And so here we go. So here's what I want to do is I want all of you to do what I call the internal echo check. So before we really go deeper into phase locking, what I want is for you to experience how a pattern actually shows up in your system and how it shows up not mentally but physically and yes energetically because we are made of energy. Physics tells us that everything is made of energy. So I want you to feel and experience what that feels like. So this is only going to take a couple of minutes, but what I want you to do is I want you to place one hand on your chest. You can put it on your chest or your stomach or both, it doesn't matter, whatever feels comfortable and safe for you. Or it could even be wherever you naturally feel an emotion or tension. Well, mine would be in my face right now because it's all in that tooth right now. So just place your hand wherever you might be feeling that tension. And I want you to just feel into that. And as you're feeling that tension, remember our bodies are antennas and signals. Our body actually responds before our logical mind can even pick it up. So when we pay attention to our body and that tension, it really is giving us information. So if you just put your hand wherever your attention is and just feel into that. And I just want you to allow yourself without judgment and then just ask it because when we ask it, we're actually asking the subconscious to bring forward whatever that message is and that tension. And I want you to just ask it to bring to mind one situation in your life where you just keep looping. It doesn't matter if it's big, small, or whatever, just ask it to bring it forward. Because at this point, we're asking the subconscious to tell us what that loop is. And I want you to feel into it. I want it to be something that feels repetitive, something you can't quite shift, or even if you tried, it still keeps returning. And I don't want you to analyze it. And I just want you to name it in your mind. That's all you're doing. You're just giving it a name. I won't share the name that I just got for mine, but ah. So now, instead of thinking about the situation, I just want you to just keep feeling into it. And I want you to notice the echo it creates in your body. How is your nervous system responding to this now that it is in your awareness and now that you have given it a name? Is it still in the same place that you're touching? Maybe it shifted. Maybe you started off with your hands on your heart and it moved to your throat. Maybe your hands were on your stomach and it's now in your chest, or vice versa. It dropped to your stomach. Maybe it's in your back. Mine is still in my jaw. And or maybe it's in the way that you're breathing and it's your breath. And I don't want you to fix it. I just want you to feel and experience the echo of it. And as you're sitting there, just feeling the echo of it, I want you to just gently ask yourself this question. Is this happening right now? Or is this an old pattern replaying itself? And your body is totally going to answer before your mind does. So most people might feel a drop. It might tighten more. Maybe it becomes a familiar sensation. Maybe it feels heavy in your nervous system. That experience that you're feeling, that is part of one of the things that is part of the phase lock. So when we get phase locked, what happens is our brain is always scanning for threats. It's either scanning for a threat or scanning for predictions because it's trying to anticipate a threat before it happens. So that is what our brain is designed to do. So as soon as it phase locks onto something, it then communicates to the subconscious. The subconscious then digs around in that big library of yours that you've had of past experiences, and it says, oh, this is the thing, this is what I need to play. So the pattern starts to play and then it sends a signal to the nervous system, and the nervous system starts to respond. And the moment that all of that happens, in less than a millisecond, it can create a phase lock. That's how fast this can actually happen. And this isn't your fault. This is truly how we, and I say we because I'm part of this too, how we have learned to survive. And so it's not necessarily about undoing and making whole. What's happening is that when we start to recognize the way our adaptations, we can then make another choice of how we want to move forward. And so, again, the pattern is not mental, it's actually structural. Structural. I can't say that with my with my mouth right now, so I'm really sorry, but you guys know what I'm saying. And it is it's a resonance that you are unconsciously tuning into. We're always tuning into something. But this is something that happens to us unconsciously. And so here's probably the thing that I'm going to tell you that might feel disappointing, but it isn't, because we can always make changes. Change can always happen to our nervous systems and to our subconscious and just to ourselves in general. But it's really hard to break it with just willpower. So what we have to reset it at its root. All right, I'm going to pause right there. Does anybody have any questions?
So the phase lock, can you describe that one more time?
The phase locking is what happens is when so this is the kind of the neuroscience part of it, is that the brain is always detecting, is this a threat? Even when you're in your house and you're sitting in a room, the moment you walk into that room, it says, is there a threat? Do I need to make a prediction to help keep you safe? Okay. So let's say you walk into a situation, whether you know it or not, your brain picks up on something. Like I said, it's gonna be threat or prediction. It immediately sends a response to the subconscious. The subconscious immediately scans through your library of past experiences, and it says, oh, here's a past experience that connects to that threat. Then what it does is it sends that signal into the nervous system, and the nervous system reacts. We often talk about that reaction as being flight, fight, freeze, fawn. So it can be those reactions. So it can either go into hyperarousal or hypoarousal. So hyperarousal is those fight, flight, and freeze responses. The hypoarousal is when we drop, and we drop into what we drop into is called feigned death. And it's where we are literally at the point, what you'll usually hear people say are things like, well, it doesn't matter what I do anyways, it just doesn't work out. So we have the hyperarousal where it creates, it can create anxiety, overwhelm. We go into that fight response and we freeze. And freeze doesn't necessarily mean like we stand there still. Freeze can be I feel so overwhelmed by everything that's happening here. I need to remove myself. And that removal is hiding, and that's the freeze. When we drop down to that hypoarousal, it's actually our body trying to conserve resources so that if we do hit that flight, fight, or freeze, we can bounce up again and we'll have enough metabolic energy to actually step into that. But when you're in that hyperarousal, you are literally like, I don't know why I do this. I keep trying. It's usually diagnosed as massive depressive disorder. And I'll be honest, this is usually the area in which you find your suicidal people because the hypoarousal then keeps you locked in that tunnel vision that can happen from the flight, fright, or freeze. It keeps you locked in the tunnel vision, and you literally, the brain, and I'll explain how the brain works in just a second. Your brain literally cannot see past the hour, past the day. It only sees what's in front of it. So I'll explain in the brain why that happens is because when we trigger the sympathetic, do you have a question?
No, I coughed. So, but
Oh,
it doesn't have to only be, I say no, and then I ask you a question. It doesn't have to only be this extreme level kind of response. What you're saying
no.
is the mind is scanning all the time, and you can just have a
Yes.
pattern that's not necessarily hyper or hypo.
It will always go into hyper or hypo. And what happens is we don't realize that. And we're going to talk, like, are you familiar with polyvagal theory?
I don't know.
Okay, so we're going to talk about that a little bit later. So that
Okay.
might help kind of answer your question.
Okay. Okay.
But believe it or not, we do have different ranges in which we fall into that. So you might have a flight response that would be different from Jen's flight response, but you're still moving into hyperarousal. Does
Okay.
that make sense?
Yeah.
So even when you're sitting on the edge of that window of capacity, and the window of capacity in that window is, and I'll show you in the polyvagal example that I have, is like you're socially engaged, you're feeling really good, like things like you're not in a state of, oh my gosh, what's going to happen to me? A
Yeah.
lot of us, a lot of us don't necessarily sit in that window. We sit right on the edge of that window. So right in here, which we're sitting on the edge of dysregulation because because we've had experiences where our body or our brain has picked up on stuff where we sit on that edge of window so that when something happens and let's say we go to flight, metabolically it is less taxing on our body to go from, I'm going to say sitting on the edge of the window of that dysregulation to go to flight than when we're sitting in that window
Yeah.
of capacity and going to flight.
Yeah.
So when we have an experience, and phase locking is a good example of like if you notice I'm having this repeated pattern somehow got locked because I did have that trauma, or I prefer to use the survival response. I did have that response. And so now it's been literally memorized into the neural pathways of the brain. So I'm going to go back to the brain. Sorry, I realized that I kind of, oh no, because you asked me a question. Did that answer your question?
I think so. Yeah.
Okay. So the reason that our brains do this is that, we have our left side of logic, analytical thinking. It is our planning side. It's pretty much like our everyday lives, right? And then the right side is the side of creativity and imagination. It's where our intuition sits. It's the fun side, right? But in that side, that is where our emotions are. So when we have a phase locking response that keeps looping and it triggers the brain to the subconscious to the nervous system, and our nervous system starts really reacting, this right side really starts to heighten in emotions. And when that happens, our hemispheres really do like to try to balance itself out. So the left side of our brain then basically takes over the right side of our brain to try to control the chaos. And when it starts to take over, that side of our brain becomes very rigid and very structured. So a lot of times when we are kind of going through kind of the nervous system dysregulation, sometimes it really is hard for us to fully tap into those emotions that are arising. And believe it or not, it is a protective mechanism to keep us safe. Because it could be that the chaos of those emotions could become so overwhelming that it could completely shock the body. And if it completely shocks the body, we actually can die from that. So we do have a built-in mechanism. The problem is that when it creates that pattern, we have those repeated patterns, then our body then puts us in that puts us in that survival response, and we're no longer in that window of capacity. We're sitting at the dysregulation. I hope that makes sense. If it doesn't, let me know. So now I'm going to keep going. So I want to talk about like other ways in real ways in which phase locking can look like in real life. Especially now that you've kind of experienced your own echo, I just want to demonstrate some ways that it can show up from day to day. So an example can be time distortion. So you feel stuck in the past or you're anxious about the future. We always talk about that, right? Especially in psychology. If you're stuck in the past, usually that's a sign of depression. If you're anxious, it's because you're trying to anticipate and always live in the future. And many of us oftentimes live in one of these two time dimensions. But where we oftentimes don't live, and we really, really have to focus on this, is living in the present moment. Because we all know the only thing that really matters is what's happening in the present moment. So when we try to break the pattern or the loop, that phase lock, we're already doing it from a frequency that we are not fully attuned to. Because if we're trying to do it from the past is already done. So that is not a frequency that is connected to the present moment. Same thing with if we're living in the future. The future hasn't happened yet. So we're connecting to something, to a frequency that isn't coherent with our system, that can that can help us have harmony and balance within our system. Another one is emotional inertia. So a good example is we go to bed and we wake up having the same emotional tone all the time. Maybe that's dread, maybe that's anxiety, maybe that's worry. And when we keep experiencing, or literally when our body every day is experiencing dread, anxiety, worry, whichever it is, or it can be a culmination of all of those. That's it. That's a good example of phase locking happening. Now here's one that I'm going to tell you I'm really good at, and that's thought looping. So it's the same thing. When we are analyzing, when we are replaying stuff, when we are trying to figure stuff out, I like to call that person the constant problem solver brain. This is a sign that our nervous system is living outside that window of capacity. And again, it's literally sitting on that edge of capacity in almost like it's almost sitting like in a little bit of that energy of survival response. And then what happens is when we start to really have those thoughts start to loop, we're sitting on that edge and now we're moving closer and closer and maybe we're going to flight. Maybe we're going to fight, or maybe we're just going to go straight to freeze. So those thoughts can actually tell our brain that we're in we're in a threat response basically. So another example is resonance displacement. This is when you just don't feel like yourself. And this is really in the this often falls in the category of hypoarousal, where maybe joy and music and connection just feel so far away from you, so disconnected. Oftentimes what we'll hear is people just say, I just don't have the motivation to do the things that I like anymore. So that's an example of our resonance being displaced. And so the nervous system is taking us down into that hypoarousal. And it's really is again, our brain, our subconscious, and our nervous system aren't out to get us. It's always trying to protect us. And then we can have reactivity spikes where your body starts reacting before your mind even understands what's happening. And so again, that's the brain scanning, talking to the subconscious triggering the nervous system. So if you, and I'll use me as an example, if you are somebody from a very young age that has had a lot of trauma from family growing up, one of the things that we can do is we can move from reactivity spike to resonance displacement, reactivity spike to resonant displacement. That's called the ricochet effect. And that's really hard on our system because we're literally going from high to low. And it's in that, and the reason we drop to that low is because we have identified, well, wait a minute, I need to get into that low because I need to conserve those resources for that threat that might happen, and I need to instantly jump up to hyper arousal. So please know that none of this is personal flaws. None of this is your fault because it does happen on an unconscious level. And like I said, it happens so quickly. But these are just signs that your system is just running old loops. And that's one of the good things. When we can recognize it, then we know, okay, so there's something here that I need to pay attention to. And of course, all of this is very much connected to your nervous system. So I'd like to talk a lot about nervous system regulation because it's so important. So when we get in these loops, again, a trauma response is happening. It may be big, it may be small. Either way, it's a trauma response. And your body often can't tell if it's a big trauma or a small trauma response. It just knows I'm having a trauma response. So, when our nervous system connects to whatever that frequency is in the field and it latches to whatever it believes is the coherent thing that it needs, then what can happen is that no matter what we try to do to get out of that loop, it can be really, really difficult. So, we can fall into any category. I mean, there's a lot more than those, but those are kind of the basic I'm going to say kind of like the ones that we most of the time we fall into. Okay. So, I want to show you this. Perfect. Okay. And this is the polyvagal theory that I was talking about. Da, da, da. Okay. Can you guys see that? Awesome. So oftentimes you'll see this, it's like it's kind of like demonstrated as a ladder, or you'll actually see a window and then it kind of shows you where everything falls. But when we are in the window of capacity, we are in That all lands, and we are in the ventral vagal area. And we feel safe, we make connections, we're calm, we're regulated, we've got this healthy balance, we know where to go for resources. We're literally feeling good. So when that brain scans and it triggers, we can fall into those two categories. Down below is also known as mobilization, are your cues of threat or danger. This falls into the sympathetic nervous system area. So we may feel stress or anxiety all the time. We may be in a flight or fight response. We might experience more conflict in our relationships. And I'll give you an example of a flight or fight response. Yesterday, I go to the dentist. I'm terrified of the dentist. I'm doing everything that I can to not have a reaction. So, my reaction at first is kind of this immobilizing thing. I'm feeling threatened. My body is shutting down, and the way that my body shuts down is I start crying, and I'm not a crier, like a full-blown crier, but I'm crying. I'm just like I can feel my whole system start to shut down. The dentist comes in, and I immediately go into fetal position in my chair, put my hands out to stop him from going any closer, and I yell, this poor guy, at the top of my lungs. I feel so terrified of you. And I'm kind of cleaning it up because it was really like, I'm effing terrified of you. Like, that's what I yelled at this poor guy. And he handled it like a champ, let me tell you, because I saw the look on his face, but that was my immediate fight response. I was ready to fight. I'm telling him where I'm at and waiting for his next response, right? Luckily, I didn't have to fight him. I actually immediately knew what I did and apologized. And then I went back down to the immobilization part of crying. So our bodies will react in different ways, but I definitely was not sitting in my window of capacity. I was not, when I got there, my ventral vagal was not like, oh, this is great. I'm going to talk to everybody. Everything is going to be wonderful. I literally walked in the moment I walked into the dentist, my brain started scanning. What's going to hurt me? And because I've had awful experiences with the dentist before, when the dentist walked in, it made that prediction that he's going to hurt me. So now I'm ready to fight him. So luckily I didn't have to. But that's just an example of how that theory works. And we can bounce from these all the time. We can go back and forth through these all the time throughout the day at different levels of different degrees, at different levels of degrees. Blair, you have a question?
Well, I have an observation. I just
Sure.
noticed last week that, so you know this about me, but my first husband died, but also my father died when I was 11.
Mhm.
And now I'm married again. And my current husband he's been snoring louder and more. And he also smokes cigars. My father smoked cigars, or he smoked, he didn't smoke cigars, whatever. So I noticed that we're sleeping. And because he's been waking me up lately, it's not that he doesn't cough all through the night, but to be sleeping to have somebody go, cough, it'll wake you up. And so I've
Mhm.
noticed recently that when I get jolted awake by that kind of stuff, my brain immediately goes to how can he not see this is, you know, the smoking is causing this issue or, like, and then my mind just goes with all the tragic stuff,
Yeah.
you know? And it's weird because I'm half asleep and it does that ruminating that you're talking about on the thoughts.
Mhm.
And at that particular stage, it just repeats over and over and over. Enough that last time I was like, okay, this needs to stop. I mean, eventually I go back to sleep, but it's obviously it's still there. I've worked a lot on that.
Hmm.
But it's obviously still there for it to come out like that.
Yes. So I like that's a really good example. Because usually when we go to bed, we want to be in, we want to be in our window of capacity, like we want to sleep.
Mhm.
In all honesty, I haven't been in my window of capacity for sleeping for quite some time because, if like Blair, and Jen, I may have mentioned it in a time or two when you've been with me, is that, I was a probation officer. Anybody that works in public safety gets no sleep. But even years later, I'm still in this, and like we literally, like, in that, when you're in the white, you're in this window. That's because we color code everything. So when I'm in the white, I'm in this window. I'm feeling safe. I'm really good. At night when I sleep, I'm in the yellow. So I'm kind of a mix between both of these, right? I'm in the sympathetic nervous system, dorsal, vagal. So I'm sitting on the edge of something. Um, I hear one noise and I instantly go into mobilization. I pop up, I'm ready to go, I'm ready to defend, I'm looking at where my exits are, but I've been trained so long in that's really hard to let go. But when we sleep, we want to feel safe. And so that's a really good example to Blair, to let you know that even when you go to sleep, you aren't necessarily, relaxing in your ventral vagal nerve. Which you are when you go to lay down, because if you're having that reaction, you're sitting on the edge of that window. So it's just, and again, your reaction is just showing you where your phase locked. There's something there that maybe you just kind of haven't quite dug up yet, but it's there. So that's just kind of a quick example of the polyvagal theory. Like I said, you can see it in many different ways. But the place that we want to try to stay, not we can't stay, we're not going to be able to stay in it all the time, because of the way the brain is wired. Like, from a neuroscience perspective, we can't always we stay in this, the land of fun and safety, because our brain is always scanning. But anyways, this is just an example of it. I'm going to go ahead and stop sharing. Okay. So here's what I want to do. And I want to do what I'm going to call just kind of a micro mindscape with you, so that you can just kind of meet the pattern, get to kind of know it. Know that when we do this, we're literally going into the subconscious. The subconscious will talk to us in symbols and in metaphors, but it'll also bring up real life things also. But so don't be surprised if you get some weird symbol or some weird metaphor. That's just our subconscious actually at work, and that's actually really healthy and something that we want. Okay, so what I want you guys to do is I want you to just close your eyes and just feel comfortable where you're at. And I just want you to focus on your breath. And we're just going to go back to that echo feeling that we had earlier. And I just want you to bring the feeling of your loop just back into your awareness. No judgments, nothing else. Just want you to just bring it forward. And I'm just curious, if this pattern lived in a landscape, a place, what would that place look like? And we're just going to give your subconscious permission to start bringing forward a place. And it may be something that you visually see, it may be just something that you feel. Maybe it's something that the subconscious is just having you imagine, but I don't want you to force it. I just want you to notice the first thing that comes into that landscape. And maybe it's a hallway, a field, a small room. Maybe it's darkness, but there's a feeling that's in this darkness. And what I want you to do is I just want you to take a look around in that landscape. Maybe you notice with the temperature of either, if you're outside or inside, what it feels like. Maybe it's still. Maybe it feels heavy. Maybe it's foggy or muted or cold or dry. And I just want you to let it be what it is. And then what I want you to do is I want you to now just notice what is the version of you that lives here in that landscape? What does that look like? How is your posture? What is your expression? Maybe you're sensing into a particular mood or maybe a particular energy or tone that you're giving out. No judgment, just observe. And now what I want you to do is I just want you to ask this version of you, what is it that you need that you're not getting? Or maybe that you didn't get? Because a lot of our trauma again happens in childhood of for something either we didn't get enough of or too much of something. And just let whatever arises just be the answer. Don't judge it. Maybe it's a word, a symbol, a feeling, a color. It doesn't matter. And I just want you to observe it. That's all I want you to do. Nothing more, nothing less. Now, if something small shifted in this landscape, that very first change, what would it be? Maybe it's a door opening for you. Maybe you actually are starting to feel the air move and maybe you're feeling wind on your skin. Maybe it moved from muted and dark to light. And here's the beautiful thing with your subconscious is that it really does want to work with you and it really does want to partner with you. So even that shift, even if it's a teeny tiny shift in your system, it is showing you the very first step out of that loop. And you didn't have to force it. Your subconscious just revealed it. All right, now go ahead and take a breath in and do a really, really long exhale for me, stretching and exercising that diaphragm. All right. And when you're ready, you can come back. And I know we went through that pretty quickly just because of time, but you can spend more time in each of those areas at a later time. So, we always talk about manifesting, 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 creating your reality. Those things are really important, but this is how phase locking can actually block manifestation, is that we get stuck in these survival response loops that even if we try to manifest, it's really hard because manifestation is not thought-based. It's literally field-based. So we don't manifest what we want. And we don't manifest by looking in the mirror and saying all of these affirmations. Yes, they make us feel good, but again, affirmations are thought-based. So again, we don't manifest what we want. We actually manifest and create what our field is broadcasting out. So if your field is locked into an old echo, it can't collapse into that new probability of what you're wanting to create. And this is why people, um, you know, why people when like it's kind of like they feel like they're doing the work, but nothing changes. And even though we create a new intention, the frequency is still old. So it's creating chaos. And we're not connecting to that. Okay, so we're almost out of time, and I apologize if I take us slightly over, but I do want to bring your system back into coherence. And I want to do this in not a force way, but just helping your mind and your heart and your body just come back into the same rhythm again. So I'm just going to walk you through a little coherence kind of breath exercise that's going to work with your nervous system. And it's really simple and gentle and surprisingly actually very powerful. So you can do this anytime you want. But I'm going to go ahead and just ask you just to place one hand on your chest and one hand on your belly again. And what we're going to do is we're going to connect to three parts of you: your mind, your heart, and your nervous system. And we're going to get them communicating again. So go ahead and you can close your eyes or do the soft gaze. It doesn't matter, whatever feels good and comfortable and safe for you. So I want you to just take a slow breath in as far as you can take it. And then do a nice, slow, long exhale out. And now I want you to bring your attention to your mind, not the thoughts, but the space between the thoughts. And again, I just want you to notice the tone there. Is the tone busy? Is it quiet? Does it feel pressured? Maybe it's blank. Whatever it is, we're just going to acknowledge it. And then take another slow breath in as far down as you can. And a long, long exhale. Now bring that awareness from your mind down to your heart and put it right there in your heart field. The space right there in the center of your chest. And you don't have to feel anything specific. Just notice what's there. Is it tight? Maybe it's open. Maybe it's feeling a little guarded. Maybe it's soft. And whatever you find there is okay. And now another slow breath in, as deep as you can go. And then exhale as far out and as long as you can. And now shift your awareness to your belly and just your lower body. You're just in that grounding point right there. And it's in this point, believe it or not, in this grounding point where your nervous system settles when it feels safe. And I just want you to notice right now in this moment where you're at. Does it feel heavy? Does it feel fluttery? Is it numb? Maybe it feels very rooted. Again, no judgment, just noticing. What are you noticing? All right. Now we're going to connect all three. And on your next inhale, I want you to imagine pulling breath up from your belly through your heart into your mind. And then on your exhale, imagine the breath flowing back down from the mind to the heart to the belly. And now let's go ahead and do that again. Inhale, belly, heart, mind. Exhale, mind, heart, belly. And then again, one more time. Inhale up, belly, heart, mind. Exhale down, mind, heart, belly. And now just let the breath create a gentle rhythm between these three centers. Just allow that rhythm to flow. And the more it flows, the more they're talking to each other. And this is coherence. This is what it feels like when your system comes back into the present moment instead of looping in those old patterns. All right, now go ahead and take one last slow breath in, one long exhale out. And when you're ready, you just open your eyes and just come back into the present moment. And what I want you to do is I just want you just to take a moment and notice what may have shifted for you today. Maybe something became clearer for you. Take notice of what your body showed you today. Or maybe even in the little micro mindscape exercise that we did, just noticing what your landscape revealed to you. And here's one of the beautiful things. The more and more that we bring these phase locks and these loops into our awareness, the easier it does become to change them because we don't have to force it. We just have to stop the echoing of that frequency that just keeps it the same. We literally just have to disrupt that frequency. And I'm going to share this saying with you, and I can't remember for the life of me who said it, but it's always sat in my like in my brain. I love the saying, and I actually think I got it when I was doing my undergrad work from one of my professors, and it stayed with me this whole time. But it says, how you do one thing is how you do everything. If you shift one thing, you will shift everything. And I loved this saying because we get stuck in that phase loop of doing, like, we start just doing everything the same. We might have the same hyper arousal response of anxiety, overwhelm. We might fall into that flight, fight, or freeze. Maybe it's that hypo-arousal where we completely drop and we're like, nothing's working, nothing I do ever works. What am I even doing? Why am I here? But if we can shift one thing when it comes into our awareness that we're phase locked, we can literally then shift everything. And so, maybe this doesn't mean starting with the biggest and heaviest thing in that you have. Maybe it's just starting with something small and taking one physical action every day towards this new way of being. And I always say do a physical action, not sit with it in your heart and be like, okay, yes, I feel better. That's it. We can feel it, but that's not integrating. We have to integrate. We have to teach our brain that we want to change and that something is different. And the brain responds to when we do something that's physical. And it could be small. It could be instead of if I start to get triggered in my office, and I'm using this as an example because I hated being in an office, so I would get triggered all the time. And it didn't feel, and like honestly, it didn't feel safe to me because I am scanning my threats, right? And the only exit for me is this door that's out front. And I won't get into the details of that. That's my probation brain going to work. But one of the things that I did to make a shift, instead of sitting at my desk all day, I literally took 10 minutes and walked around the building. And that's all, that was the only thing I shifted. And I noticed that within a couple of weeks, going to sit at my desk in my little cubicle, it's began to feel safer for me. So if we can just shift one thing and try to be able to do it every day, don't hold yourself to, like, if you can't hold yourself to that standard, we're not asking for perfection. We can actually settle into that shift. Then what will happen is that the things around us will begin to shift because we're no longer just being things from a phase locked position. And so I'm going to leave you with all of that. I know that we're over on time, so I'm really sorry. I was trying to keep it into time, but
I have one question.
yeah.
So, um, I'm trying to think of how do you take it into the physical realm?
So,
What my answer was anger. That was the name.
mhm,
And then it was connected to restriction or constriction.
mhm,
And then when we did the destination, it was a train station.
mhm,
You asked the age. This is like age about 7. And then, and what is, I've forgotten what you said, but my answer was cold. It was cold there.
mhm.
And so the thing that I shifted was making it warmer, but also having music in it. Oh, I don't like traveling where people are uptight, which most people are when they travel. Um, so I really hate that. But which is really funny about this to me is that this all goes back to my sister.
Oh,
And
interesting.
yeah, and like everything that I mean, this is huge. Actually, it's a huge thing for me because like if you put me in a room, that's a bad idea. It was like Don't put the limits on me because I'm going to find a way to get out of it. So how do I take that and do
So,
that in the physical, like you're talking about?
so the mindscape is to start communicating with the subconscious because the
Uh-huh.
subconscious always speaks to us. But if you noticed in your subconscious, like you said that it went from cold to warm.
Yeah.
What that's really doing is number one, subconsciously, it's already starting to create a new landscape for what your face locked in, which if it was anger, okay? So, but the way that you can bring that into the physical, and I love that you did notice your shift because your shift of honestly from making it from cold to hot, your subconscious is showing you, and this is why I love this because it's showing you that all you have to do is make a subtle change. So now let's take that out into real life, right? So I was just kind of giving you a little bit of a taste. So if I mean, like, we would probably need to spend a little bit more time going a little
Yeah.
bit deeper, but it always goes back to, okay, so now I have this. I now know that, like, when I get angry, like, maybe it's, I don't know what you want to do to your sister, but
Absolutely nothing, actually.
okay,
I don't
but
even want to
like,
engage.
you know what I mean? So
Yeah.
now like so now what we've done in your system is we helped it recognize that phase locking loop, right? So
Mhm.
now when that feeling or that experience comes up again and it triggers that phase locking loop of anger, I'll ask you, what is something that is I'm going to say that is because we talk about SMART goals, right? Going to SMART goals. But even in our life, we need to follow those SMART goals, right? We need to do something that we can do, that we can measure, that we can tell if a change
Mhm.
happens. So for you, because I can't tell you how to change your anger, what is it
Mhm.
that when you feel into that, like what is it that you could do, that a simple thing that you could do tomorrow that if you got triggered, you can immediately shift that energy to start you can it's not even shifting, it's creating a disruption in that loop. Does that make sense?
Uh, so for me, because it's about constriction or restriction, I
Mhm.
would say pull my attention towards all the areas where I have freedom.
Okay, so what's an area that you have freedom?
Well, my job,
Your job.
my daytime, like how I schedule my day.
Perfect.
Yeah.
So you start to have that. You can go back and you can focus on that schedule. And I don't know if you're like me, I make lists everywhere, right? I
Yes,
like
I make
lists.
lists.
But it could be as simple as doing one of those things on your list. Does that make sense?
I think you broke up. It goes back
Oh,
to what?
sorry, my phone started ringing. It could be as simple as doing one of those things on your list. Does that,
Oh, so you're saying I would list the areas in which I have freedom
yeah, so
and
yeah,
then going to do that or going to experience that.
I don't know if you saw that, but my kitten's getting all wild in my tree back there. He must be getting bored. Yeah, so how we bring that into the physical world is literally in that physical action. It's to bring in that integration. So, if I'm having this phase lock, I'll I'll use my own example, okay? So I think that might help you. So I have a phase lock loop going back to sleeping, since you brought up sleeping, that I am on high alert. For a long time, I didn't think there was anything wrong with this, but then but then people were like, "Well, what's wrong with you? Like you're supposed to sleep in the middle in the throughout the night, right?" So instead of like I would do before, is I would just go to bed, brush my teeth, go to bed, right? I disrupt that pattern by literally taking 5 minutes, and I every night I do 360 breathing.
Okay.
That's my disruption pattern.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah.
I'm going to tell you the nights that I forget to do it, I do not sleep very well at all. The nights that I do it, my sleep patterns become a lot I'm gonna say not perfect, but a lot
Yeah.
better, if
Yeah.
that makes sense.
Uh-huh.
So what I just created was I did create a new pattern. It's not a phase lock because I'm not blocked and I'm not jolting into, survival response, but I now created a new pattern that tells my subconscious and my brain that when I go to bed at night, I'm not a threat, that I am safe. And I'll tell you, one of the reasons that I use breathing is because we breathe we take in, like, we literally breathe about 20,000 times a day. Breath is very much connected to our brain and how it responds. So we are literally sending 20,000 inputs to our brain, telling our brain whether we are safe or unsafe. So I use breathing before I go to bed, and I do the 360 breathing before I go to bed just to tell my brain that I'm safe.
Hmm.
Does that make
So you're
sense?
kind of rewiring a new pattern
Yes,
that's
because
healthier.
absolutely,
Yeah.
because that physical integration
Yeah.
does create a rewire in the neural pathways.
Yeah. That makes
And,
sense.
and the goal is to collapse whatever that old neural pathway is and then really entrain that new one. Does that make
Yeah,
sense?
so you don't really have to do it forever. Not that you would or wouldn't, but
Mhm.
you don't really, it's not like a life sentence. You're just creating a new pathway
Yes.
that will take over. Yeah, that makes sense.
Yes.
Okay.
And and like I'm gonna go back because you got I if you I mean you guys will are signed up for Saturday. So we're gonna go into this more in depth even on Saturday because today was just an hour talking about the nervous system. But we do have to be careful. And so I'm all Blair, don't ask me any questions. Are you showing up on Saturday?
Yeah, I won't ask questions.
Okay. Yeah, yeah, because this will answer this
Okay.
because we can unlearn and create
Mhm.
that new neural pathway. But here's the thing, is that even when we create something new, remember our subconscious remembers everything. So if we don't stay in an awareness honestly of gauging the regulation of our nervous system, we can eventually fall back into the old pattern.
Yeah. Because it was probably longer, bigger connection than
Mhm.
anything that you're going to do to replace it.
Yes.
Yeah.
So just keep that in mind. But yeah, so I have a
Okay.
cool video to show you how that works.
Okay. Cool.
Um, Jen said, "Wow, this has been eye-opening. I did not even realize I was looping. Thank you for sharing this. Time to do some shifting." Oh, you're welcome, Jen. Thank you for being here. So, if you guys don't have any more questions, hopefully I see you on Saturday because like I said, we'll talk more in depth about this on Saturday. Um, so that you can have I hate to say it, like a more detailed understanding, but yeah, it'll be fun.
Thank you.
Thank you so much, ladies, for showing up. I appreciate your support and being here. This is always so fun, and I love your questions, Blair.
Okay.
All right, ladies, I will
See
see you
ya.
on Saturday. Have a great evening, okay?
Bye, you too.
All right, bye, you guys. See you Saturday, Jen.